Integrity Houston for toilets.
Go ahead, James.
Hey, Reed, we are working a plan to do another dump prior to the manual piloting DFTO. I'll have more words for you on that shortly, but I wanted to give you a last call for the use of toilet before we get into that. Again, toilet is still no-go for urine use, but I want to give you a last call for fecal use as well.
All right, that sounds good, Jenny. And just to confirm, we can still continue to dump secondary line right now, correct?
Affirm.
And James, what is preferred for you on the DFTO? You want CAPCAM 3 or you want HHB or both?
Good question, Reed. We do not have the bandwidth currently for HHP, so we'll be using CAPCAM 3.
Okay, sounds good.
Integrity Houston for big picture forward plan for the wastewater dump.
Go ahead.
Hey, Tina, as you know, this is a big issue that we want to work toward resolving. So we are going to set up a wastewater dump on the primary line starting now. And we would like at least one crew member to be looking out the window and reporting what they see. Our intent here is just to have that vent open, and we will leave it open until either we reach a minimum quantity on the tank, we have no flow, or we hit a 3-hour limit.
Hey, James, great plan. The one thing we would add is we've got some secondary dumps either in work or just finishing. So in order to assess what's coming out of the primary, we recommend waiting a few minutes for that. We can let you know when it looks pretty clear, if that sounds okay.
Yeah, Tina, that sounds reasonable. How long do you expect that to take?
All right, the dump just started, and it usually completes within a minute. However, there's usually some secondaries after that, so I would estimate in about 3 minutes.
Okay, that sounds great to us. Give us a call in 3 minutes, and we will get started. I also wanted to revise my last and let you know that through further discussion on the ground, we can let you know that while we are performing this vent, the toilet is go for fecal use, so good news there.
This is Artemis Mission Control. Here in Houston, Texas, you've got a view of the flight director, Jeff Radigan. To his left is Flight Director Diane Daly. She will be the Flight Director for the Orbit 2 shift, as the Orbit 1 shift is now transitioning off console. Down to the bottom of your screen, at the very bottom, is Jackie Mahaffey. She is the cruise trainer for this mission, and she'll be serving as Capcom. And to her left, CSA astronaut and Artemis 2 backup Jenny Gibbons. She's been the Capcom for the Orbit 1 shift, speaking with the astronauts. You just heard them discussing the next wastewater dump opportunity. This has been something the team has been troubleshooting today. They're looking to empty this line that they anticipate or they understand was blocked by ice. The spacecraft is still in a good configuration, and this doesn't have any emission or lunar flyby impacts. We are now 3 days, 2 hours, 24 minutes into the Artemis 2 mission. However, we are referring to this day as Flight Day 4. The crew is now 94,334 miles away from the moon, which you can see there. They are ever growing closer and ever growing farther away from our home planet, 187,185 miles and counting. As the Orbit 1 and Orbit 2 teams continue to conduct their handover procedures, I'll also be handing over the Public Affairs console to my friend and colleague, Anna Schneider. Really enjoyed being with you here today. The Orbit 1 shift will be back tomorrow, and of course, our astronauts are still working throughout the day, and our stream is still live 24/7 on NASA's YouTube.
All right, Houston, we are fairly quiescent here. Let us know when you start the vent.
It's in work, Reed. Integrity crew, the vent valve has opened.
All right, we'll keep monitoring, but right now we see no flow at all.
Copy.
We heard one little chug deep down beneath us, and now we are getting some spurts with some increasing force, so let's just keep open here.
Copy. Great news, and we're seeing some flow on our side too. Thank you, Reed.
Yeah, you got four crew members rooting for Max Blizzard, and we have a good view out the window. It looks like it looked when we started the mission, so that's a good sign.
Great news. I wanted to cue the mic so you could hear a clap there. Integrity crew, we're maneuvering to the attitude for manual piloting.
Okay. Okay, integrity copies. Houston Integrity, just let us know when we're go to start the manual piloting DFTO2, step 1.
All right, Integrity crew, you are go to start the manual piloting DFTO. We are going to come on board with CAPCAM 3. And when you perform this DFTO, we are happy to take 10 degrees rotation in all axes instead of 15 if you like. We will also happily accept all pilots that we have time for. Let us know how she handles.
Okay, we like the sound of all that. Copy 10 degrees, so we'll aim for that to speed this up a bit so we can get more inputs.
We appreciate it. Thanks, Jeremy. And crew, we're on board with you through CapCam 3.
This is Artemis Mission Control. The Orbit 1 and 2 teams are currently in their handover, and the crew aboard Orion has stepped into their manual piloting procedures. This may look like a familiar view. We saw it just after launch when the crew was conducting the proximity operations demonstration. That was NASA astronaut Victor Glover, the pilot of the spacecraft, manually commanding Orion.
Ready for a quick waste dump update.
We'll take it.
Hey, James, now we have about 10% of the time we see a full blizzard, and then it dies down to a flurry, and then it picks up to a full blizzard again. It's going about blizzard about once every maybe 30 seconds, but it is very dynamic. It's not just one continual send, but it's beautiful, and we're watching the tank quantity go down, so hopefully it's looking good.
That's super helpful for us to know. Thanks, Reed. We're still watching it.
And Houston integrity, it's not in the procedure, so we just want to double check with. We're going to do this DFTO in DAP mode 2.
Affirm, DAP 2.
Heard some words from Commander Reed Wiseman discussing the wastewater dump currently ongoing. We had a view of that from outside the cabin. We are back inside Orion right now, preparing for the manual piloting demonstration. On the left side of your screen is Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen, and to his right, NASA astronaut Christina Cook. During this demonstration, the crew will be able to manually pilot Orion once again and test its 6 degree of freedom and 3 degree of freedom. If you look closely in the background, you can see NASA astronaut and pilot Victor Glover filming part of this demonstration. Artemis 2 is MET 3 days, 2 hours, 38 minutes into its flight, and we have just crossed the 2/3 mark on the way to the moon. Now 187,633 miles away from our home planet of Earth, 93,890 miles away from the moon.
All right, and just giving you some handling qualities here for the yaw. Everything was nominal. I noted that with this orb mount, It does have some play in it, as we knew, and so just applying some downward force to try and make sure you don't get coupling is required, but that's fine, that's workable. And then we had a little bit of coupling and roll, in both in the same direction on that one. So we had about 4 degrees of roll through the 20 degrees of yaw.
Copy all.
Okay, and we're still just completing the pitch maneuvers, but we're not picking up any coupling for the pitch. And the vehicle is very responsive at nulling out the half degree per second. It's almost instantaneous.
Copy.
Again, the manual piloting demo is beginning aboard the Orion spacecraft, and as the Orbit 1 and 2 teams hand off, I am going to hand off to my friend and colleague, Anna Schneider. She will be carrying through the rest of the manual piloting demo, the rest of the crew's day, and our live stream continues 24/7 on NASA YouTube.
Okay, Houston, for the roll, the only thing I noticed is I had a little coupling in the roll right in yaw, and was able to compensate for that in the roll, or in the roll left. Didn't have any coupling in the yaw. I think we're just getting used to the orb mount too.
Copy all, Jeremy, and we are a minute away from a data rate change. We will have a very brief LOS during that time. I will let you know when we're back with you.
Okay, copy that.
Integrity crew, we're back with you.
Okay, we just finished the 3 DOF maneuvers. The rates all seem the same, the response seemed the same. It is difficult to tell whether you might have some cross-coupling from the RHC or if it's from the vehicle, but we were pretty convinced in the last roll one that the coupling that showed up, which was 4 degrees, was coming from the vehicle and not the RHC.
Copy all, Jeremy. Thank you.
Good evening from Mission Control Houston inside the Artemis Flight Control Room. I'm Anna Schneider with NASA Communications, and the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers has recently come on console and has completed their handover with the Orbit 1 team, who are wrapping up their shift. The Orbit 2 team this evening will be led by NASA Flight Director Diane Daly, and the Capcom or capsule communicator will be Jackie Mahaffey. The crew on board the Orion spacecraft, which you can see.
With the jets intentionally deselected with the left yaw, the rate built up as expected nominally, but it's having a hard time nulling out the rate. So it's almost there now, and we've got 7 degrees of yaw before it nulls the rate.
Copy all. Thank you, Jeremy.
So the vehicle overshot by 7 degrees once it was released from the yaw left, and then it built up very slowly, built up a rate, and it looks like it's trying to take it back to where the RHC was released, but it's overshooting again.
Copy all.
Yeah, and during that maneuver, we haven't maneuvered back to center yet. We developed 5 degrees of roll left and 5 degrees of pitch up. And then when it built up a rate to try and look like it tried to go back to where the RHC was released, it went back to 355 instead of 350. So just to read all that down, we commanded a left yaw until we saw 350 yaw. It went to 343, and then it went back to 355 before it nulled all the rates. And now we'll put one in, and we'll just take it back to 0.
Very good. Thanks, Jeremy.
This is Artemis Mission Control in Houston, Texas. The crew on board the Orion spacecraft named Integrity are currently working through a manual pilot team developmental flight test objective, or DFTO. You can see the crew there on your screen. That's a live look inside the cabin of the Orion spacecraft. On the left-hand side, you can see CSA, or Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen, and next to him is Christina Cook.
Okay, and now the yaw right is complete, and as expected, took quite a bit of time to build up the rate, but was able to null the rate quickly and accurately.
Copy all.
During this developmental flight test objective, the crew is working to perform several attitude maneuvers to compare 6 degrees of freedom and 3 degrees of freedom attitude control. 6 degrees of freedom refers to the 6 ways that a spacecraft moves. There are 3 translational degrees of freedom.
During the pitch checkout, there is no perceptible change in performance. It's able to build the rate quickly and null it out quickly and accurately.
Excellent. Thanks.
Okay, and then for roll in this configuration, the left roll is a little bit slower to build up. The right roll is responsive as per normal.
Copy.
And Jenny, we are going to switch pilots now. This will be myself in the seat and making comments.
Copy. We're following the swap. Thank you.
And currently on your screen, you can see CSA astronaut Jeremy Hansen and NASA astronaut Christina Cook swapping places as they continue through the manual piloting developmental flight test objective. Again, they are performing several different attitude maneuvers to compare 6 degrees of freedom and 3 degrees of freedom attitude control on the spacecraft. 6 degrees of freedom refers to the 6 ways that a spacecraft moves. There are 3 translational degrees of freedom: forward, backward, up and down, and left and right, and 3 rotational degrees of freedom, which are roll, pitch, and yaw. So through this developmental flight test objective, the crew is comparing the standard 6 degrees of freedom to
Integrity Crew Houston, we want to offer up to our pilot, if you want, you can do 5 degrees instead of 10 to move it along a bit quicker. We're looking forward to getting some info for you as a pilot here.
Okay, we copy that.
Currently, NASA astronaut Christina Cook is piloting the spacecraft for this manual piloting DFTO.
That one already had 10 in, so I went ahead and completed all the way back. Standard 6 off behavior, fast ramp up to the DAP speed. There were 2 degrees of roll added in. I did attempt to stop that cross coupling during the roll, during the yaw back, but I didn't get there. So just a little cross coupling there, getting used to the orb mount and its play.
Copy, we follow. Thanks, Christina.
And this is Artemis Mission Control. So through this developmental flight test objective that you're watching them complete on your screen, They are working to compare the standard 6 degrees of freedom to the degraded qualities of 3 degrees of freedom. In that case, it would mean the crew could only control the rotational axes of roll, pitch, and yaw.
Okay, similar behavior with 5. In this instance, there was just a very small amount of roll in that I did try and take out, and with a quick roll pulse, it did take it out. That was just kind of a manual thing that I did, but it was nice to see you could do that if you had unintended coupling going on.
Copy all.
Okay, a similar thing with roll. Roll was definitely the most difficult for me to keep the yaw out coupling naturally, so I just kind of put some manual yaw in to undo the coupling there, but similar 6-off performance.
Excellent. Thank you, Christina. And just for your information, we are comfortable going a little over on this activity. Our schedule allows for it today, and we're getting a lot of good info from you. So we'll have you continue to the end of the DFTO.
Copy. Negligible change in 3 DOF with the yaw.
Copy.
Okay, I'm going to make a comment on the pitch up. There was some roll there. I tried a different technique where I actually kind of held the orb mount at the high end of its play rather than pressing down at the low end since I was pitching up. But I think that actually made it a little bit harder to keep the roll coupling out. So for pitch down, I'll go ahead and hold it at the bottom of its play. So in this, again, in the direction, in this case, of the pitch.
Copy all.
Okay, great performance in pitch, similar to the 6 DOF.
Copy.
Okay, on that one, I kind of went the other direction at first, but was able to remove some yaw oscillations. I think the orb mount with roll, I was just playing with some compensation there, like kind of actively using muscles to keep yaw in or from going. Mixed results, but it was good to try some of that actively.
We like it. Thank you.
All right, Jenny, on this one, given that when we did this, he had an overshoot, which was then overcorrected 5 degrees in the direction he came from, I wanted to try the method of actually overshooting on purpose to try to get back to the 5 degree, so we'll see if that works.
Thank you. We're following along.
And Houston, we have some Earth and Moon viewers here who are putting in requests for different motions so they can see things in the window.
We're seeing them in the camera views, and we're enjoying it. Look at those scientists go.
Boom, 5 degrees.
Boom.
All right, Jenny, and that one, as expected, had a slow start, but then finished right when release happened and was able to build up the full rate eventually.
Copy.
Okay, and as expected with those specific jets deselected, no negative or no clear difference in pitch.
We copy.
Okay, and on that one, I released at 5 degrees, 2-degree overshoot. I'm holding the orb, I'm holding against the play of the orb mount that is inboard to my body and forward or down while putting in the roll, and so it takes a little bit of kind of like counteracting muscle movement for that, but I think I had pretty decent lack of coupling.
Copy.
Okay, a little more roll for the peanut gallery.
They love it.
All right, Houston, thanks for your patience. We had to see the full moon and the Earth at the same time, which was just accomplished. Now we're going to be rolling back.
We understand and approve.
All right, Jenny, I definitely have some stuff to report for that one. Going back, which was the roll left, two things. The pitch coupling that you saw, I do think was due to an input on the RHC, but the yaw, I don't think was, because I actively tried to take out the yaw, and I felt myself having to go out of the detent in the other direction to start affecting that yaw motion that you were seeing. So I think that might have been because of it was difficult for it to compensate potentially, and I think that one might not have been because of inputs at the hand controller.
Copy all. GNC agrees.
Rockin'. We see ourselves complete with the manual piloting, and we'll continue and close out the procedure if you agree.
All right, Christina, we totally agree. And while we have you, we just wanted to give you one item for Jeremy's timeline. We noticed a conflict with his PPC and the filming for exercise and day in the life. So we just wanted to let him know that he can do the PPC early. We'll be ready to support that, and be mindful of when the filming starts at his discretion. Thanks.
Crew copies all. Thanks.
Our pleasure. And with that, I will pass you on to the very capable Jackie Mahaffey.
This is Artemis Mission Control in Houston, Texas. The crew has recently wrapped up their manual piloting developmental flight test objective.
Thank you.
And the Capcom or capsule communicators here in Mission Control have also handed over as the Orbit 1 and Orbit 2 teams have completed their handover. So the oncoming Capcom for this shift will be Jackie Mahaffey, and she took over from Ginny Gibbons. Ginny was a backup CSA astronaut for this mission, and then Jackie Mahaffey was the crew training lead for Artemis 2. Now that the manual piloting flight test objective is complete, the crew is going to continue on to other scheduled activities for the day. So coming up on the timeline, NASA astronaut Christina Cook and CSA or Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen both have scheduled crew exercise. Each of the crew members has a block of exercise scheduled each day to maintain their health and fitness during their trips to space on the Orion spacecraft.
For wastewater dump.
Go ahead.
Hey, Jackie. Every once in a while, we do hear a little like thud in the spacecraft, followed by a little plume of snowflakes. So there probably is just ice chugging through those lines, and we are still getting little intermittent blizzards. You probably see it on the solar array cameras, but it is still just going. It's dwindling. And then if you do see the volume pick up in the next over the next 5 minutes, there's going to be a few secondary dumps as well.
Reed, we copy all. Thank you for the insight.
And this is Mission Control. You heard some additional...
And confirm you all, I have secured Cab Camp 3.
Negative. Stand by. Reed, and to clarify, we are interpreting that as you would like us to turn off Cab 3.
Yeah, that is a firm.
We will let you know when that's in place.
Okay, copy.
This is Artemis Mission Control. You're now seeing an exterior view of the Orion spacecraft. This view is coming to you from one of the solar array wing cameras. The Orion spacecraft has 4 solar array wings, and each of those has a camera. And the crew is continuing to work through the remainder of their activities for the day. So in addition to the upcoming exercise for NASA astronaut Christina Cook and CSA or Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen, both NASA astronaut Victor Glover and Christina Cook also have a lunar flyby plan review coming up. And this plan review had already been completed earlier in the day by NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman and CSA astronaut Jeremy Hansen. And during this activity, each crew member is reviewing their lunar targeting package, which is the primary tool guiding crew observations during the lunar flyby on flight day 6. This package consists of 2 key components: the lunar geography review and the lunar targeting plan.
Integrity Houston, we have only an external view of Orion.
Okay, sounds good. We'll probably, you were bandwidth limited earlier. I don't know if you want HHP in a little while. We can happily set that up. And next question is, if you could ask flight, is there an estimate of toilet coming back functional for urine? That'll just change some of our next steps. If not, we'll continue on CCUs.
Reed, our goal for the toilet is to vent down to approximately 10%, and then we need to have a couple of discussions here on the ground, so you can expect a couple of hours before we would potentially give you a go for toilet use.
That is exactly the information we wanted to hear. Thank you so much.
And you just heard some additional communication there between NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman and the Capcom, or capsule communicator here on the ground, Jackie Mahaffey, who you can see there on the bottom of your screen. They were discussing the wastewater dump, which has been taking place, as well as the toilet use. At the beginning of cruise sleep on flight day 3, the ground had performed a routine and regularly scheduled wastewater dump. And during that dump, it was terminated after only dumping 3%. They have since completed an additional wastewater dump just about 30 minutes ago, and the team on the ground is evaluating the status of the toilet on the Orion spacecraft, but in the meantime, the crew has been instructed to continue using CCUs, which are collapsible contingency urinals.
Houston integrity, the DFTO procedure is complete.
Jeremy, we copy, and we will be taking you back to biased tail to sun.
Copy that.
This is Artemis Mission Control. We did have that confirmation that the manual piloting developmental flight test objective is officially complete. They were just completing some cleanup actions on that task, and now they're going to start moving into the remainder of the activities for the day. The Orion spacecraft is also being maneuvered to what is known as biased tail to sun attitude. The Orion spacecraft uses a tail-to-sun attitude as its primary passive or passive safe flight orientation during transit to maintain thermal balance and maximize power generation. Now on your screen you can see a view of the Artemis Real-Time Orbit website, or ARO. And this provides updates on the data and telemetry coming from the Orion spacecraft. So currently the Orion spacecraft and its crew are about 188,000 miles away from Earth, and they have about 92,000 miles between them and the moon. Not too long ago, they did surpass the 2/3 mark as they continue to close in on the moon, and they are expected to make that closest approach and their lunar flyby on Flight Day 6 coming up on April 6th.
Houston integrity, Jackie, I'm ready for that PPC.
All right, they are dialing you now. Integrity Houston, per Reed's question a few minutes ago about the HHP cam, we do have the bandwidth, and when Jeremy finishes up his conference, we would be happy to come back on board. Second item, maybe Christina can help answer this. We were wondering at the DUs, how was the audio volume-wise, clarity-wise from the speaker unit?
Houston, we copy the question, and we will get back to you shortly. Houston, Orion, we dropped the call, so if you could redial, that'd be great.
In work.
This is Artemis Mission Control in Houston, Texas. You're currently seeing a live view of the Orion spacecraft, which is named Integrity by its crew. The crew currently on board the Orion spacecraft includes NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman, who is serving as the commander, NASA astronaut Victor Glover, serving as the pilot, and the mission specialists are NASA astronaut Christina Cook and CSA, or Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen. The crew is currently awake and working through several different activities. Currently on the timeline, NASA astronaut Victor Glover is working on his lunar flyby plan review. And during this activity, the crew members are reviewing their lunar targeting package, which is the primary tool which will guide crew observations during the lunar flyby on flight day 6. Throughout the day, each of the crew members will have a chance to review that plan and ask any questions that they may have ahead of that lunar flyby. And so NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman and CSA astronaut Jeremy Hansen have already completed that flyby plan review, and then coming up a little bit later on the timeline, NASA astronaut Christina Cook will also have the opportunity to review that plan. The lunar targeting package that they are reviewing consists of two key components, the lunar geography review and the lunar targeting plan. The lunar geography review helps astronauts study major lunar features in advance of the flyby and learn how to orient themselves during the flyby, while the lunar targeting plan provides a detailed timeline of observation targets, background science context, and specific instructions for imaging and verbal descriptions. NASA astronaut Christina Cook is also currently preparing and working on her daily exercise using the flywheel exercise device on board the Orion spacecraft. Each of the crew members has a block of time each day to complete that exercise, and the flywheel is about the size of an extra large shoebox, and it can support a variety of different exercises from aerobic to resistive exercise. And so after Christina completes her exercise block, CSA, or Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen will then complete his exercise as well, and then NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman will complete his exercise. NASA astronaut Victor Glover completed his exercise block earlier in the day prior to their midday meal. Towards the end of the crew day, CSA astronaut will also have a public affairs event with the Canadian Space Agency before the full crew goes into their private medical conference, which is a daily conference between the crew and their medical teams here on the ground. And then they will have a private conference with the flight director, who currently on console is NASA Flight Director Diane Daly, supporting the Orbit 2 shift. And then the crew will transition into their pre-sleep period, during which they perform some hygiene activities and also have a chance to eat their dinner before they prepare for sleep. And then once they go to sleep, that will round out the Flight Day 4 activities. And there on your screen, you are seeing a live look inside the Artemis flight control room here in Mission Control Houston. On the upper right-hand portion of the screen is the flight director console, so that flight director currently is Diane Daly, who is serving as the Orbit 2 flight directors throughout the mission. There are 3 shifts or orbits who provide 24/7 coverage and support to the crew and the Orion spacecraft for the Artemis 2 mission.
and integrity, AGA readings when you're ready.
We are ready, and also arrays and ARS are in the planned config for exercise.
We copy, go for exercise, thank you. CO2 1.6, O2 19.3, pressure 13.8, temperature 75.3.
Houston copies, and as a reminder, we are staying in a 2 ARS scrubber config for this exercise period, and we'll definitely want the intermittent, the scheduled AGA reading in between the 2 runs and at the end. If it's looking good, we're talking about whether we might want to stay in that config through the end of reads exercise.
We copy, will do.
Integrity Houston, a reminder that we do have the bandwidth to come on board with the HHP camera. Let us know if that's something you'd like to do.
Houston Integrity, at this time we're going to hold off on doing the HHP camera just due to the things we're trying to manage right now, but we will get you on board as soon as and often as we can.
No rush. Thanks.
This is Artemis Mission Control in Houston, Texas. We are currently 3 hours and 48 minutes into the Artemis 2 mission. We are on the 4th flight day, following a liftoff on Wednesday, April 1st at 5:35 p.m. Central, 6:35 p.m. Eastern from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. You're currently seeing a view of the Artemis Real-Time Orbit website, or ARROW, which you can follow along with at nasa.gov/trackartemis. This visualization provides updates on the data and telemetry coming from the Orion spacecraft. Currently, Orion is about 189,000 miles away from Earth and about 91,000 miles separating the spacecraft and the moon. It's continuing to close in on the moon, and it is scheduled to have its closest approach and lunar flyby on flight day 6, which will be Monday, April 6th. Yesterday, during flight day 3, the Orion spacecraft did pass the halfway mark, where it became closer to the moon than the Earth. And then tomorrow on flight day 5, which will be April 5th, the Orion spacecraft will cross into the lunar sphere of influence, which is when the gravitational forces from the moon will be stronger than those of Earth. Currently, the crew on board the Orion spacecraft is awake, and they're continuing to work through the remainder of their activities for the day, which includes some blocks of exercise, as well as a lunar flyby plan review. Earlier in the day, the crew did complete a public affairs downlink event, and then 2 of the crew members have already completed their flyby plan review. There was originally a scheduled outbound trajectory correction burn. This was the second planned correction burn that ended up being canceled, as it was determined that it was no longer needed. Tomorrow on flight day 5, there is another opportunity for an outbound trajectory correction burn should it be needed. And then coming up later in this shift, there will also be a Canadian Space Agency public affairs event before the crew begins to wind down for the day and go into their pre-sleep period, where they will complete hygiene activities as well as eat their dinner before they go into their sleep period. Once they enter flight day 5, following their sleep period, there are several activities planned for tomorrow, including an aux suit developmental flight test objective. The aux suit is the Orion Crew Survival System suit, those orange suits that you see them wearing. So that will take up about the entire morning portion of their day before they move into their midday meal. And again, there's also a planned outbound trajectory correction burn scheduled for flight day 5 as well. And then shortly after that burn is when they will enter that lunar sphere of influence. It'll take place during their pre-sleep period on flight day 5.
Integrity Houston for wastewater dump insight.
We're with you, go ahead.
Hey, Victor, we are looking for the latest observations you might have on what the wastewater dump is sounding like and looking like.
It's a little louder in here than it was the last time we reported, and so I haven't noticed anything noise-wise, but visually it's going from a light drizzle to a moderate blizzard at about 5-second intervals, and they last for about at about 5-second interval, but it still seems to be going strong.
We copy all. Thank you.
This is Artemis Mission Control in Houston, Texas. You heard some communication there between NASA astronaut Victor Glover, who is currently on board the Orion spacecraft, and you're seeing a view of the exterior of the Orion spacecraft in the upper left hand of your screen there. Those views coming to you from the solar array wing cameras, which are attached to the 4 different solar arrays on the spacecraft. And then in the bottom right hand of your screen, you can see a look inside the Artemis Mission Control here in Houston, specifically the Capcom and flight director consoles. So the Capcom or capsule communicator there in the center portion of that screen is Jackie Mahaffey, and she serves as the single voice link between the ground and the crew on board the Orion spacecraft. They were having some additional conversations about the Universal Waste Management System, which is basically the space toilet on board the Orion spacecraft. Typically, they do a wastewater dump every day. There were some issues with that wastewater dump at the end of Flight Day 3 that they've been working to troubleshoot throughout the day, and so they've been performing an additional wastewater dump for the past hour or so, and so they're just providing some updates on the status of that activity.
Houston, integrity, AGA readings when ready.
We are ready.
CO2 1.8, O2 20.1, 13.95 PSI, 76.1 degrees.
We copy all. You got a very positive reaction from the ECOM BME area of the room on that CO2 level. And reminder, although I'm not sure it'll be needed, pay attention if you're feeling any symptoms of a rising CO2 and report those as well.
Absolutely.
This is Artemis Mission Control in Houston, Texas. You heard some communication there between NASA astronaut Victor Glover, who is serving as the pilot on board the Orion spacecraft as part of the Artemis 2 mission, and the Capcom or capsule communicator here in Mission Control. They were discussing some recent AGA or anomaly gas analyzer readings. The crew takes and reports these readings periodically throughout the day, and this is a portable laser-based instrument that can detect trace contaminants and also measures gases inside the Orion spacecraft, such as carbon dioxide. And the Capcom or capsule communicator here in the room mentioned some reactions from a couple of consoles here in the room, and that was the EECOM and BME consoles. So EECOM is the Emergency Environmental and Consumables Manager, and they are responsible for the internal thermal control systems, air and water supply, and purification systems on board the Orion spacecraft. And then BME is the biomedical engineer here in Mission Control, and they ensure crew health and safety by planning, facilitating, and monitoring all activities involving crew health, medical operations, and relevant hardware. And there's a full view inside the Artemis Flight Control Room here in Mission Control. That EECOM console that I was referencing is in the left-hand side of your screen towards the back of the room. And you can see all of the other various flight control positions here in the room. And the upper left-hand corner of your screen is the ground control console, or GC. And behind them is the science officer. So the science officer is responsible for the science taking place on the mission, specifically the lunar science.
Question on exercise timing. We would really love it if we didn't have to wait 15 minutes between crew members, but let us know.
And Houston is happy to eliminate that wait and go for the next person.
Awesome, thank you.
This is Artemis Mission Control again. Some additional conversations there between the crew and the team here in Mission Control discussing the exercise taking place on board the Orion spacecraft. So NASA astronaut Christina Cook recently wrapped up her daily exercise block, and then CSA, or Canadian Space Agency, astronaut Jeremy Hansen is scheduled to do his exercise next, followed by NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman. And so each of the crew members on board the spacecraft have a daily block of exercise, and they all use a device known as the flywheel, which is a exercise device that uses a flywheel or a series of pulleys and a torque limiter encased in a frame the size of an extra large shoebox, which functions similar to a rowing machine, and they can complete various different types of exercises using that machine, such as aerobic and resistive exercise.
question for photo TV.
Go ahead.
Actually, it's two questions. First question is 7 gigs too big of a video to downlink? And second question is, did you all get the window DFTO videos?
Checking on both.
Excuse me, window DFTO pictures. And then, Jackie, if you could pass along a message to the team analyzing those videos about the window DFTO, let me know when you're ready to copy.
Ready.
When I first started taking the photos, I realized that small changes in how far the lens was from the window made a difference in the image quality. And so the first few shots are not useful, and they start on window. The first shots were on window 3, I believe. And then, I'm sorry, window 2. And on window 2, I retook the photo starting on the left side, and the voice recording will say window 2 left, 80, 135, 200 and 400, but it will say lens touching. So those are the images to use. So hopefully you'll notice there's 2 sets of the window 2 left, and then the rest of the images are all correct. The docking hatch, window 2, and then the center and right images for window 2.
We copy all. Thanks for the insight. And Victor, just to circle back, the team did get the window DFTO photos. They are taking a look at those today, and so your additional and to the first question about the 7 gigs for video size, we can give that a shot via optical comm overnight tonight.
Okay, it's a PAO video, and we'll get that onto PCD1, and hopefully you get it overnight. Thanks.
Copy, PCD1.
This is Artemis Mission Control. Some additional communication there from the crew, namely NASA astronaut Victor Glover, who was discussing a couple of different things. The first one related to some images that were captured as part of a window optical quality developmental flight test objective.
Hey Jackie, that video is nothing special. It's just some routine cabin shots. All the other cameras were used, so I used an iPhone at lowest res, and it just made a large file. Sorry about that. We'll fix it tomorrow.
You are almost 2/3 of the way to the moon. It's a special video. Thank you.
The window optical quality DFTO was completed during flight day 3, and it involved the crew taking images at varying focal lengths of subjects such as the Earth or the Moon in order to evaluate window optical effects on imagery. There are a variety of developmental flight test objectives, or DFTOs, throughout the mission, and they are all designed to evaluate objectives proposed to improve Orion hardware, flight systems, flight operations, processes, and procedures. They were also discussing the transfer of a video file using the optical communication system. The OPCOM system is a laser communication that uses infrared light rather than traditional radio waves to send data to and from space, and this infrared light's higher frequency allows more data to be sent in a single transmission to Earth.
Integrity Houston for some timeline planning.
First, we're going to give you AGA readings as we just swapped crew members. We are still looking at CO2 at 1.7, O2 at 19.9, and cabin temperature at 76.0.
That sounds great. You might even say whoop. With that, big picture on timeline, we've got, we're talking about two modifications related to the opportunistic lunar imaging. The first is that we want to deconflict that event with the PAO event so that we've got a solid, calm, confident PAO attitude. And secondly, we want to tie in some related Peltor PCD audio recording testing. It doesn't necessarily have to happen during the imaging, but somewhat related. So 2 questions for you all. One, we're looking for an estimate on when Reed will have finished exercise. And 2, would Christina or another available crew member have some time to conduct a Peltor PCD audio recording check? So maybe 10 to 15 minutes there. And then also get the cameras prepped for the opportunistic imaging. That way, if we can get it in before the PAO event, we might try to do that.
Christina is happy to do those things, and for exercise, I'm just going to do it as efficiently as I possibly can when Jeremy is complete here.
Okay, that sounds great. For your awareness, we're looking to get in at least 10 minutes in the lunar science imaging attitude prior to the PAO HD test at 05:35. And Christina, when you're ready, I've got some instructions for you on the
Yeah, to me that's a much higher priority than my exercise, so why don't we get in the attitude, and then if I can knock out some exercise later today, I will.
Yeah, Reed, there's some setup to get ready for it anyways, so you're completely good to start exercising now, and if we have to cut you off a little early, it sounds like you won't mind.
Okay, Jackie, this all sounds super. Jeremy's going to do his exercise, and when he's done, if there's any time, I'll jump on until you tell me to stop. But please prioritize maneuvers and science objectives over my exercise.
Okay, we copy all.
This is Artemis Mission Control in Houston, Texas. Some communication there between NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman, who is serving as the commander on board the Orion spacecraft. That spacecraft you can see in the upper left-hand corner of your screen, those views coming from the solar array wing cameras. They were discussing an upcoming opportunity to capture some science imaging from the Orion spacecraft, specifically of some potential celestial objects outside one of the Orion windows, discussing moving that a little bit on the timeline to deconflict with an upcoming Canadian Space Agency Public Affairs Downlink event that CSA astronaut Jeremy Hansen has on his timeline, and also deconflicting it with some ongoing crew exercise. The crew has been rotating between who is completing their exercise, as they are all sharing the flywheel device on the Orion spacecraft. So NASA astronaut Christina Cook and CSA astronaut Jeremy Hansen have both completed their daily exercise. And now NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman is getting set up for that exercise as the team here in Mission Control Houston work to configure the attitude of the Orion spacecraft to be able to capture some of that opportunistic celestial imaging outside the Orion windows coming up here shortly.